You wake up and the weight is already there. Before you even open your eyes, before your feet touch the floor, you feel it pressing down on your chest like something you cannot name. It follows you into the kitchen, sits beside you at work, whispers in the quiet moments when you thought you might finally rest. You look around and everyone else seems to be carrying it too, this invisible burden that no one talks about but everyone knows. You have tried everything to lighten it. You have distracted yourself, worked harder, filled your life with noise and movement, but still it remains. And somewhere deep inside, you wonder if this is just how life is supposed to feel. Heavy. Exhausting. Like you are dragging yourself through days that all blur together into one long, gray stretch of time. But what if I told you that this heaviness is not natural? What if I told you that you were never meant to live this way, that something fundamental has been forgotten, something that once understood would change everything? Rudolf Steiner spent his life studying the invisible forces that shape human existence, and what he discovered about why life feels so heavy will shake you to your core. This is not about positive thinking or self-help platitudes. This is about something far deeper, something that has been hidden from you since the moment you were born. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear will make you see your suffering in a completely different light. Rudolf Steiner understood something that most people never grasp in their entire lives. He understood that human beings are not meant to live exclusively in the material world, yet that is exactly what modern civilization has trained us to do. We have been taught to see only what is visible, to value only what can be measured, to trust only what can be touched. And in doing so, we have severed ourselves from the very source of lightness, of vitality, of meaning that makes life bearable. Steiner called this the Great Forgetting, the moment in human evolution when we traded spiritual awareness for material mastery. And the cost of that trade is the heaviness you feel every single day. Think about your life for a moment. Think about how much of your energy goes into maintaining things. Maintaining your body, your job, your relationships, your possessions, your reputation. You wake up and immediately the maintenance begins. You have to eat, you have to clean, you have to work, you have to respond, you have to perform. And underneath all of this maintenance is a quiet desperation, a sense that you are running on a treadmill that never stops, that no matter how hard you try, you never quite catch up. Steiner saw this clearly. He saw that when human beings lose connection to their spiritual nature, life becomes nothing but maintenance. It becomes a series of obligations without purpose, tasks without meaning, days without light. And the heaviness you feel is not depression, it is not weakness, it is not failure. It is your soul crying out for something it has been denied. Steiner spoke about the etheric body, the life force that animates your physical form. This is not mysticism, this is observation. There is something in you that is not flesh and blood, something that gives you vitality, that makes your heart beat and your lungs breathe and your cells regenerate. Modern science calls it metabolism, energy, homeostasis. But Steiner understood it as something more. He understood that this life force is not self-sustaining. It needs nourishment, and not the kind of nourishment you get from food or sleep or exercise. It needs spiritual nourishment. It needs connection to something larger than the material world. And when that connection is severed, the etheric body begins to weaken. It begins to drain. And you feel it as heaviness, as exhaustion that no amount of rest can cure, as a tiredness that lives in your bones. This is why you can sleep for 8 hours and still wake up exhausted. This is why you can take a vacation and return feeling just as drained as when you left. This is why you can achieve everything you thought you wanted and still feel empty. Because the heaviness is not coming from your circumstances. It is coming from a fundamental disconnection between who you are and how you are living. Steiner saw that modern life demands that you live almost entirely in your physical and mental bodies. You are expected to think, to produce, to analyze, to solve problems, to make decisions, to optimize, to perform. And all of this happens in the realm of the intellect, in the realm of matter. Meanwhile, your etheric body, your astral body, your true self, starves. It withers. It cries out for attention. And the only language it knows is the language of heaviness. Now here's where Steiner's insight becomes revolutionary. He did not believe that the solution to this heaviness was to escape the material world. He did not preach withdrawal or renunciation or transcendence in the traditional sense. Instead, he taught that the material world is meant to be a school, a place where the soul learns and grows and evolves. But it is only a school if you remember that you are a soul. If you begin to believe that you are nothing more than a body and a mind, then the school becomes a prison. The lessons become punishments. The growth becomes suffering. And life becomes heavy in a way it was never meant to be. Steiner explained that every human being exists simultaneously in multiple worlds. You have a physical body that belongs to the earth, that is subject to gravity and decay and the laws of matter. You have an etheric body that connects you to the realm of life, to growth and vitality and the rhythms of nature. You have an astral body that connects you to the realm of feeling, of emotion, of desire and aversion. And you have an ego, a true self, that connects you to the realm of spirit, to freedom and purpose in the eternal. Most people live their entire lives aware of only the first two. They know they have a body. They know they have thoughts and feelings. But they do not know they have a spirit. They do not know they are connected to something infinite. And because they do not know this, they try to find meaning and fulfillment in the material world alone. And the material world, by its very nature, cannot provide this. It can provide pleasure, it can provide distraction, it can provide temporary satisfaction. But it cannot provide the lightness that comes from knowing who you truly are. The heaviness you feel is the weight of living a half-life. It is the weight of trying to be human while denying half of what it means to be human. Steiner saw this so clearly. He saw people walking through the world like ghosts, going through the motions, performing their roles, but never truly alive. And he understood that this was not a moral failing. It was not laziness or weakness or lack of discipline. It was ignorance. It was forgetting. And the way out of it was not through more effort, more striving, more trying to fix yourself. The way out was through remembering. But what does it mean to remember? What does it mean to reconnect with your spiritual nature in a world that denies its existence? This is where Steiner's teachings become practical, where they move from philosophy to practice. He taught that the first step is simply to notice. To notice that you are more than your thoughts. To notice that you are more than your emotions. To notice that there is something in you that observes, that witnesses, that remains present even when everything else is in chaos. This observer, this witness, this presence, is your true self. It is the part of you that is connected to the spiritual world. And when you begin to pay attention to it, when you begin to live from it instead of from your racing mind or your reactive emotions, everything starts to change. Steiner gave specific practices for this. He taught meditation, but not the kind of meditation that is popular today. Not the kind that is about relaxation or stress relief or clearing your mind. He taught meditation as a tool for strengthening your inner life, for building the muscles of consciousness that allow you to perceive beyond the material. He taught exercises in concentration, where you hold a single thought or image in your mind with complete focus, not allowing it to drift or dissolve. This sounds simple, but try it. Try holding the image of a rose in your mind for 5 minutes without thinking about anything else. You will discover how weak your inner attention has become, how much your consciousness has atrophied from lack of use. And you will also discover that with practice, it strengthens. And as it strengthens, you begin to experience something remarkable. You begin to feel lighter. This is not metaphorical. Steiner observed that when you develop your inner life, when you cultivate the ability to direct your consciousness rather than be directed by it, your etheric body grows stronger. Your life force increases. You begin to feel more vitality, more energy, more aliveness. And the heaviness that you thought was just part of life begins to lift. Not because your circumstances have changed, but because you have changed. You have remembered something essential. You have reconnected with the part of you that is not subject to the laws of matter, the part of you that is free. But there is another dimension to this heaviness that Steiner explored, and it has to do with karma. Now, before you dismiss this as esoteric nonsense, stay with me. Steiner's understanding of karma was not about cosmic punishment or divine justice. It was about cause and effect in the realm of soul and spirit. He taught that every action you take, every thought you think, every feeling you feel, creates an imprint, not just in the physical world, but in the spiritual world. And these imprints follow you. They shape your experiences. They create the conditions of your life. And when you live unconsciously, when you move through the world reacting rather than responding, taking rather than giving, closing rather than opening, you accumulate what Steiner called karmic debt. You accumulate heaviness. This is why some people seem to carry more weight than others. This is why some people can face the same challenges you face and somehow remain light, while you feel crushed by them. It is not about luck or privilege or genetics. It is about the accumulated weight of unconscious living. Every time you lie, even a small lie, you add weight. Every time you harm someone, even unintentionally, you add weight. Every time you betray yourself, every time you ignore your inner voice, every time you choose comfort over truth, you add weight. And over time, over years and lifetimes, this weight becomes almost unbearable. You do not understand why life feels so hard. You think it is unfair. You think you are cursed. But Steiner would say you are simply carrying the accumulated consequences of choices you do not remember making. Now here is the profound part. Here is where hope enters. Steiner taught that karma is not fixed. It is not a sentence you must serve. It is a condition you can transform. Every moment you choose consciousness over unconsciousness, every moment you choose truth over comfort, every moment you choose love over fear, you begin to dissolve the karmic weight. You begin to lighten. This is not about becoming perfect. This is not about never making mistakes. This is about living with awareness. It is about taking responsibility for your inner state, for your reactions, for your choices. And when you do this, when you truly commit to this, something miraculous happens. The heaviness begins to lift. Not all at once. Not in a sudden flash of enlightenment. But gradually, steadily, undeniably. Steiner also spoke about the role of suffering in this process. He did not see suffering as something to be avoided at all costs. He saw it as a teacher, as a signal that something is out of alignment. The heaviness you feel is not your enemy. It is a message. It is your soul's way of telling you that you have strayed too far from your true path, that you have forgotten who you are, that you are living in a way that is not sustainable. And when you learn to listen to this message, when you stop trying to numb it or escape it or fix it with external solutions, you discover that it contains guidance. It contains wisdom. It shows you exactly where you need to grow. But modern culture teaches you to do the opposite. It teaches you to medicate the heaviness, to distract yourself from it, to pretend it is not there. It offers you endless ways to avoid feeling what you feel. Entertainment, consumption, busyness, substances, relationships, achievements, and all of these things provide temporary relief, but they do not address the root cause. They do not address the fundamental disconnection that creates the heaviness in the first place. And so the heaviness returns. It always returns, till you finally stop running and turn to face it. This is what Steiner meant by the path of initiation. It is not about joining a secret society or performing esoteric rituals. It is about the courage to face yourself, to see yourself clearly, to acknowledge the ways you have been living unconsciously and to choose differently. It is about the willingness to feel the heaviness fully, to allow it to teach you, and then to do the inner work necessary to transform it. This work is not easy. It is not quick. But it is the only work that actually works. It is the only work that leads to genuine lightness. And here is something that will surprise you. Steiner taught that you are not alone in this work. He spoke of spiritual beings, hierarchies of consciousness that exist in dimensions beyond the physical, that are intimately involved in human evolution. He taught that when you begin to do this inner work, when you begin to wake up, these beings take notice. They begin to help you. Not in obvious ways. Not by solving your problems or removing your challenges, but by strengthening you from within, by providing insights and inspirations, by arranging synchronicities that guide you forward. You might experience this as intuition, as sudden clarity, as unexpected support appearing exactly when you need it. Steiner would say this is not coincidence. This is the spiritual world responding to your effort, meeting you halfway, helping you carry the load as you learn to lighten it yourself. Now I want to pause here and speak directly to you. Because if you have stayed with me this far, if these words are resonating with something deep inside you, it means you are ready. It means your soul is calling you to wake up. And I want you to know that this path I am describing, this path of remembering who you truly are, this is what this channel is dedicated to exploring. Every video we create is designed to help you reconnect with your spiritual nature, to give you the tools and understanding you need to transform your life from the inside out. If this message is touching you, if you feel a stirring of recognition, I invite you to like this video. It helps us reach others who are searching for the same truth. I invite you to subscribe to this channel, because we are building a community of people who are committed to waking up, who are no longer willing to live half lives. And I invite you to turn on the notification bell, so you never miss the insights and practices we share. You are not meant to walk this path alone. None of us are. And when you join us here, you become part of something larger than yourself, part of a collective awakening that is happening right now, all over the world. Let us go deeper now into what Steiner understood about the nature of heaviness itself. He saw that heaviness is not just a feeling. It is an actual spiritual condition. It is what happens when your consciousness becomes too identified with matter, too absorbed in the physical plane. Matter, by its nature, is heavy. It is dense. It is subject to gravity. And when your consciousness descends too deeply into matter, when you forget that you are spirit temporarily inhabiting a body rather than a body that somehow has consciousness, you take on the properties of matter. You become heavy. You become dense. You become subject to forces that were never meant to control you. Steiner explained this through his understanding of the fall. Not the religious concept of original sin, but the evolutionary moment when humanity gained self-consciousness, gained the ability to think and choose and create, but lost direct connection to the spiritual world in the process. This was necessary. It was part of the plan, because in order to develop true freedom, in order to become truly human, we had to separate from the spiritual world. We had to forget. We had to descend into matter and learn to navigate it, to master it, to transform it. But we were never meant to get lost down here. We were never meant to forget completely. And yet that is exactly what happened. Generation after generation, we sank deeper into materialism, into the belief that only the physical world is real. And with each generation, life became heavier. You are living in the heaviest age humanity has ever experienced, not because life is objectively harder, but because the collective consciousness has descended further into matter than ever before. Think about it. Think about how much of your life is spent interacting with dead things. Screens, cars, buildings, machines, money, data. All of it dead. All of it matter. And when you spend your days surrounded by dead things, manipulating dead things, thinking about dead things, your own consciousness begins to petrify. It begins to harden. It begins to die. And this is what you feel as heaviness. This is what you experience as that crushing weight that makes it hard to get out of bed, hard to care, hard to hope. But Steiner saw the way out. He saw that just as consciousness can descend, it can also ascend. Just as you can become heavy, you can become light. And the key is to reverse the process. To stop pouring all of your attention into the material world and start directing some of it inward and upward. To cultivate a relationship with the invisible, with the alive, with the spiritual. He taught specific exercises for this. One of them is what he called reverse meditation. At the end of each day, you review everything that happened, but you review it backwards. You start with the last thing that happened before you sat down to meditate and work your way back to the moment you woke up. You see yourself from the outside, as if watching a film of your day running in reverse. This practice does something remarkable. It breaks your identification with the flow of time, with the relentless forward march of one thing after another. It gives you perspective. It shows you that you are not your day, you are not your experiences, you are the consciousness that observes them. And in that observation, that witnessing, there is lightness. Another practice Steiner taught is what he called moral imagination. This is the ability to see not just what is, but what could be. To look at a situation and perceive its potential, its hidden possibilities, the higher truth waiting to emerge. Most people have lost this capacity. They see only what is in front of them. They see only problems, obstacles, limitations, and when you see only these things, you become trapped in them. You become heavy with them. But when you cultivate moral imagination, when you train yourself to see the spiritual possibilities within material situations, you begin to experience something extraordinary. You begin to see that nothing is fixed, nothing is permanent. Everything is in flux, everything is becoming, and you have a role in what it becomes. This realization is profoundly liberating. It is profoundly lightening. Steiner also understood that heaviness is contagious. You absorb it from the people around you, from the culture you live in, from the collective consciousness of humanity. Have you noticed how being around certain people makes you feel heavier? How watching the news or scrolling through social media leaves you feeling drained? This is not your imagination. This is real. You are a sensitive being. You are porous. You pick up on the inner states of others. And when you live in a world where most people are carrying tremendous heaviness, where anxiety and despair and hopelessness are the norm, you absorb some of that. It seeps into you. It becomes part of your own inner atmosphere. And if you are not conscious of this, if you do not actively work to protect and cleanse your inner space, you will drown in collective heaviness that is not even yours. This is why Steiner emphasized the importance of what he called hygiene of consciousness. Just as you wash your body, just as you clean your living space, you must clean your consciousness. You must be intentional about what you allow into your inner world. This means being selective about the media you consume, the conversations you participate in, the people you spend time with. It means creating boundaries, not out of judgment or superiority, but out of self-preservation. It means recognizing that your consciousness is precious, that it is the most valuable thing you have, and that you have a responsibility to guard it. When you do this, when you begin to take your inner life seriously, you discover that much of the heaviness you have been carrying was never yours to begin with. You have been carrying it for others, for the collective, out of a misplaced sense of compassion or duty. And when you set it down, when you give it back, you feel the lightness that was always there underneath. Steiner spoke often about the Christ force, and whether or not you resonate with Christian terminology, what he was pointing to is essential. He saw the Christ event, the incarnation of a divine being into human form, as the turning point in human evolution, the moment when lightness entered the world of heaviness, the moment when spirit fully penetrated matter and showed that matter could be transformed, could be resurrected, could be made light. For Steiner, this was not about believing in a historical figure or adhering to religious doctrine. It was about recognizing a principle, a possibility that became available to all of humanity at that moment. The possibility of conscious transformation, the possibility of turning heaviness into light through inner work, through self-knowledge, through love. He taught that you can connect with this Christ force directly, not through church or ritual or belief, but through the sincere effort to transform yourself. Every time you choose love over fear, every time you choose truth over deception, every time you choose consciousness over reaction, you align yourself with this force. You become a vessel for it. And it works through you to lighten not just your own life, but the lives of everyone you touch. This is how the world changes, not through political movements or technological advancement or social reform. Although these things have their place, the world changes when individuals wake up, when they remember who they are, when they begin to live from their spiritual nature rather than their material programming. And as more people do this, the collective consciousness begins to shift. The heaviness begins to lift, not just for you, but for everyone. Now I want to address something that might be troubling you as you listen to this. You might be thinking, this all sounds beautiful, but how do I actually do it? How do I lighten my life when I still have bills to pay, responsibilities to meet, problems to solve? How do I access my spiritual nature when I am exhausted and overwhelmed and barely keeping my head above water? And this is a legitimate question. This is the question that Steiner spent his life answering, because he understood that spiritual development cannot happen in a vacuum. It has to happen in the midst of ordinary life. It has to be integrated into the daily reality of work and relationships and challenges. And the remarkable thing is, when you approach it this way, when you bring spiritual awareness into your everyday activities, those activities themselves become the path. They become the practice. Steiner taught that there is no separation between the spiritual and the material. The material world is the spiritual world in condensed form. Every object, every interaction, every moment contains spiritual reality if you know how to perceive it. And you learn to perceive it by being present, by paying attention, by bringing consciousness to whatever you are doing. When you eat, really taste your food. Feel its texture, notice its temperature, appreciate the life that went into growing it. When you work, do your work with full attention, not rushing to be done, not wishing you were somewhere else, but fully present to what you are doing. When you speak with someone, really listen, not planning your response, not judging or evaluating, but truly opening yourself to receive what they are saying. These simple acts of presence, of consciousness, of attention, are the foundation of spiritual development. And they can be practiced anywhere, anytime, by anyone. You do not need to sit in meditation for hours. You do not need to retreat from the world. You simply need to wake up to the world you are already in. And here is what happens when you do this. Here is what Steiner observed. When you bring consciousness to your daily activities, those activities become less draining. They become energizing, because you are no longer doing them mechanically, no longer going through the motions while your mind is somewhere else. You are actually there. You are actually alive in the moment. And in that aliveness, there is lightness, there is joy, not the manufactured happiness that comes from getting what you want, but the deep satisfaction that comes from being fully present to what is. This is the secret that most people never discover. They spend their whole lives chasing experiences and achievements that they think will make them happy, make them light. But the lightness they are seeking is not in any experience. It is in the quality of consciousness they bring to experience. It is available right now, in this moment, regardless of your circumstances. Steiner also taught about the importance of rhythm. He observed that modern life has become chaotic, irregular, disconnected from natural cycles. You eat whenever, sleep whenever, work whenever, with no real pattern or structure. And this chaos creates heaviness. Because your etheric body, your life force, thrives on rhythm. It needs regular cycles of activity and rest, of engagement and withdrawal, of giving and receiving. When you establish healthy rhythms in your life, when you go to bed and wake up at consistent times, when you eat regular meals, when you create daily practices that you return to again and again, you strengthen your etheric body. You give it the stability it needs to support you. And this creates lightness. Not the kind of lightness that comes from escaping responsibility, but the lightness that comes from having a strong, stable foundation. Think about how children thrive on routine, how they become anxious and difficult when their schedule is disrupted. This is not about control or rigidity. This is about the deep need of the life force for rhythm. And this need does not disappear when you become an adult. It just gets ignored. You think you can push through, that you can override your natural rhythms with caffeine and willpower and determination. And you can, for a while. But eventually the etheric body breaks down. Eventually the heaviness becomes overwhelming. And then you wonder what is wrong with you, why you cannot keep up, why you feel so tired all the time. Steiner would say nothing is wrong with you. You are simply violating the laws of life. And life is giving you feedback through the sensation of heaviness. So one of the most practical things you can do to lighten your life is to establish rhythm. Create a morning practice that you do every day. It does not have to be elaborate. It could be as simple as sitting quietly for 5 minutes, setting an intention for your day, expressing gratitude for being alive. Create an evening practice that helps you transition from the activity of the day to the rest of night. Review your day, acknowledge what you learned, release what you no longer need. Honor the natural cycles of your body by eating and sleeping at regular times. And notice what happens. Notice how this simple structure begins to create a container strong enough to hold your spiritual development. Notice how the heaviness begins to lift when your life has rhythm and your life force has stability. There is one more dimension to this that Steiner explored deeply, and it may be the most important of all. He taught that the ultimate source of heaviness is isolation, the feeling that you are alone, that you are separate, that you are fundamentally disconnected from everything and everyone around you. This feeling is an illusion, but it is a very convincing one. Modern culture reinforces it constantly. You are taught to be independent, self-sufficient, self-made. You are taught to compete rather than cooperate, to accumulate rather than share, to protect rather than connect. And all of this creates a sense of isolation that weighs on your soul like nothing else. Because the truth is, you are not separate. You are not isolated. You are part of a vast web of relationships that extends from the people in your life to the natural world to the spiritual realms themselves. You are connected to everything that exists. And when you remember this, when you feel this, the heaviness dissolves. Because isolation is heavy. Connection is light. Steiner taught practices for cultivating this sense of connection. One of them is what he called living thinking. Instead of thinking about things as if you are separate from them, you practice thinking with them, thinking into them, allowing your consciousness to merge with what you are observing. When you look at a tree, instead of just seeing it as an object out there, you allow yourself to feel into its life, its growth, its being. When you interact with another person, instead of seeing them as separate from you, you recognize that you are both expressions of the same spiritual source, that what lives in them also lives in you. This practice breaks down the walls of isolation. It reveals the deep interconnection that is always present but usually invisible. And in that revelation, there is tremendous lightness. Your life is not meant to be this heavy. The weight you carry is not natural. It is not inevitable. It is the result of forgetting who you are, of losing connection to your spiritual nature, of living as if you are nothing more than a body and a mind navigating a meaningless material world. But you are so much more than that. You are a spiritual being on a journey of awakening. You are consciousness exploring itself through the vehicle of matter. You are a point of light in an infinite field of light that has temporarily forgotten its own radiance. And the moment you remember, the moment you reconnect, the moment you begin to live from your true nature instead of from your conditioning, everything changes. The heaviness lifts. Not because your circumstances have changed, but because you have changed. Because you have remembered what you forgot. Because you have come home to yourself, and in that homecoming, there is a lightness that nothing in this world can touch, a joy that does not depend on conditions, a freedom that no external force can take away. This is what Steiner knew. This is what he taught. This is what is available to you right now, in this moment, if you are willing to do the work of remembering.